Greetings, one and all. Hope you're having a great evening. If you're on the East Coast, I hope you're staying warm. Positive energy all the time. Make sure you eat to live. Health is wealth. So take care of yourself. So this evening, we're going to do a little bit of history. I'm trying to document as much history here on Vegan Intel as possible. And this evening, I'm going to be documenting the history of vegetarianism, Rasta Ital eating, and veganism. For the sake of making sure the history is documented somewhere. So let's get started. Vegetarianism is very ancient. It goes back quite a ways. And the difference between vegetarianism and veganism is that today in modern times, uh, vegans don't eat any animal byproducts and vegetarians, some do. So there's a lot of people that call themselves vegetarians that are actually vegans. Like myself, I called myself a vegetarian for many years, but I was actually a vegan because I wasn't consuming any animal byproducts. So today's conversation is about vegetarian, ital, and vegan. We're going to cover all of that. This is going to be a great conversation. So let's get it. Now, vegetarian is the practice of eating lots of vegetables and fruits. But vegetarians do sometimes consume eggs, cheese, milk, things like that. So, let's look into the history of vegetarianism. Okay. Now, vegetarianism, the theory and practice of living solely upon vegetables, fruits, grains, legumes, and nuts, with or without the addition of milk products and eggs, generally for ethical or aesthetic, environmental, or nutritional reasons. All forms of flesh, meaning meat, fowl, and seafood, are excluded from all vegetarian dishes, but many vegetarians use milk and milk products. Those in the West usually eat eggs also, but most vegetarians in India exclude them, as did those in the Mediterranean lands in classical times. Vegetarians who exclude animal products altogether and likewise avoid animal derived products such as leather, silk, honey, and wool are known as vegans. Those who use milk products are sometimes called lacto-vegetarians, and those who use eggs as well are called lacto-ovo vegetarians. Those who exclude land-based meats like vegetarians but consume fish and shellfish are called pescatarians. Among some agricultural peoples, flesh eating has been infrequent except among the privileged classes. Such people have rather misleadingly been called vegetarians. Ancient origins. Deliberate avoidance of flesh eating probably first appeared sporadically in ritual connections, either as a temporary purification or as qualification for a priestly function. Advocacy of a regular fleshless diet began about the middle of the first millennium BCE in India and the Eastern Mediterranean as part of a philosophical awakening of the time. That's not all the way correct, because in ancient Egypt, which we call Kemet, they were also vegetarian, and a lot of North Africa. But we'll continue. In the Mediterranean, avoidance of flesh eating is first recorded as a teaching of the philosopher Pythagoras of Samos in 530 BCE, who alleged the kinship of all animals as one basis for human benevolence toward other creatures. From Plato onward, many pagan philosophers, especially the Neoplatonists, recommended a fleshless diet. The idea carried with it condemnation of bloody sacrifices and worship, and was often associated with belief in the reincarnation of souls, and more generally with a search for principles of cosmic harmony, in accord with which human beings could live. In India, followers of Buddhism and Jainism refused on ethical and aesthetic grounds to kill animals for food. Human beings, they believe, should not inflict harm on any sentient creature. This principle was soon taken up in Brahmanism and later Hinduism, and was applied especially to the cow. As in Mediterranean thought, the idea carried with it condemnation of bloody sacrifice and was often associated with principles of cosmic harmony. In later centuries, the history of vegetarianism in Indic and Mediterranean regions diverged significantly. In India itself, though Buddhism gradually declined the ideal of harmlessness with this corollary of a fleshless diet, spread steadily in the first millennium CE until many of the upper castes and even some of the lower had adopted it. Beyond India, it was carried with Buddhism northward and eastward as far as China and Japan. In some countries, fish were included in an otherwise fleshless diet. West of the Indus, the great monotheistic traditions were less favorable to vegetarianism. The Hebrew Bible, however, records the belief that in paradise the earliest human beings had not eaten flesh. Aesthetic Jewish groups and some early Christian leaders disapproved of flesh eating as gluttonous, cruel, and expensive. Interesting. Some Christian monastic orders ruled out flesh eating, and its avoidance has been a penance and a spiritual exercise even for laypersons. A number of saints, such as Saint Anthony of Egypt, were noted vegetarians. Many Muslims have been hostile to vegetarianism, yet some Muslim Sufi mystics recommended a meatless diet for spiritual seekers. The 17th century through the 19th century. The 17th and 18th centuries in Europe were characterized by a greater interest in humanitarianism and the ideal of moral progress, and sensitivity to animal suffering was accordingly revived. Certain Protestant groups came to adopt a fleshless diet as part of the goal of leading a perfectly sinless life. Persons of diverse philosophical views advocated vegetarianism. For example, Voltaire praised it, and Percy Shelley and Henry Thoreau practiced the diet. In the late 18th century, the utilitarian philosopher Jeremy Bentham asserted that the suffering of animals, like the suffering of humans, was worthy of moral consideration, and he regarded cruelty to animals as analogous as analogous to racism. So he felt like mistreating animals was a lot like racism, which is very interesting. He said that in the 18th century. So you see how long racism has been around. Vegetarians of the early 19th century usually condemned the use of alcohol as well as flesh and appealed as much to nutritional advantages as to ethical sensibilities. As before, vegetarianism tended to be combined with other efforts towards a humane and cosmically harmonious way of life. Although the vegetarian movement as a whole was always carried forward by ethically inclined individuals, special institutions grew up to express vegetarian concerns as such. The first vegetarian society was formed in England in 1847 by the Bible Christian sect, and the International Vegetarian Union was formed tentatively in 1889 and more enduringly in 1908. Modern developments. By the early 20th century, vegetarianism in the West was contributing substantially to the drive to vary and lighten the non-vegetarian diet. In some places, a fleshless diet was regarded as a regimen for specific disorders. Elsewhere, notably in Germany, it was considered as one element in a wider conception of vegetarianism, which involved comprehensive reform of life habits in the direction of simplicity and healthfulness. In the second half of the 20th century, the work of the Australian ethical philosopher Peter Singer inspired a revival of philosophical interest in the practice of vegetarianism and the larger topic of animal rights. Singer offered utilitarian arguments to support his contention that modern methods of raising and slaughtering animals for human food are morally unjustified. His arguments also apply to other traditional ways in which humans use animals, including as experimental subjects in medical research and as sources of entertainment. Singer's work provoked much vexed discussion of the question of whether the traditional treatment of animals is justified by any morally relevant differences between animals and humans. Meanwhile, other debates centered on the question of whether a fleshless diet, and specifically a vegan one, provides all the nutrients necessary for human health. In the West, for example, it was long a common belief that humans could not obtain enough protein from a diet based solely on plant foods. However, nutritional studies conducted in the 1970s cast doubt on this claim, and it is seldom advanced today. A more recent issue of whether a vegan diet can provide enough vitamin B12, which humans need in a tiny amount to produce red blood cells and maintain proper nerve function. Popular vegan sources of B12 include certain fortified foods made without animal products and vitamin supplements. By the early 21st century, vegetarian restaurants were commonplace in many Western countries, and large industries were devoted to producing special vegetarian and vegan foods. So-called meat substitutes made of jackfruit, tempeh, portobello mushrooms, or tofu are common, and any number processed specialty foods have been developed using grains, beans, and other plant-based ingredients. Today, many vegetarian societies and animal rights groups publish vegetarian recipes and other information on what they consider to be the health and environmental benefits and the moral virtues of a fleshless diet. Given that livestock farming is a major source of methane emissions and that meat production requires significantly more water and land resources than does production of an equivalent amount of fresh produce, vegetarianism has been promoted as a way to combat anthropogenic climate change and to encourage more sustainable land usage. So that's the history of vegetarianism, and it's been really pushed from way back in the 1800s. People realized that they felt better. Many people didn't really want to deal with the process of raising the animals, and many people definitely didn't want to deal with the process of slaughtering the animals or cooking the animals. And so vegetarianism has been practiced for many years, even before it had a term. As I said before, it's known that most of Africa, the people in ancient times, when it was called Akibulon, were vegetarians. Only a few African tribes consumed dairy products, and these were tribes on the northeast corner of Africa. This is why many doctors are saying that black Americans are lactose intolerant and should not be consuming dairy products. And we're going to talk about that next week when I talk about some of my favorite vegan doctors. And so vegetarianism is long term. When I first changed the way I was eating, I didn't know about the word veganism, so I was a vegetarian. And in the city of Chicago, because I've been a vegan now slash vegetarian for 46 years, going on 47 years next year. And when we used to be eating right and changing into a vegetarian way of eating, one way we was able to do it is with by going to the health food store. The health food store was the place where we would go to eat right. There was no Whole Foods or anything like that. And so to be able to eat right and take care of yourself, we went to the health food store. And there was health food stores all across the country, especially in the big cities. And they would have mostly a juice bar. They didn't have much food, but they did have some food items at the health food store. And there are still some health food stores around today. And so basically, when I changed the way I ate in 1978 and I went vegetarian, I thought, we basically ate out of the produce section in the store. We would go to the grocery store and we would get produce in the produce section. And because our parents, because I was born in 1958, so those of us around my age that turned vegetarian, because our parents were a part of the Great Migration, and our parents that came from the South as little babies and little children, we were raised on a highly vegetarian meal. In other words, we had meat, but the majority of my eating growing up as a child was vegetables. So we were raised on collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, cabbage, sweet potatoes, corn on the cob, black-eyed peas, string beans, potatoes, lima beans, red beans. We were raised on that, and cornbread made with cornmeal. So for me, it wasn't really that hard to transition because all I did was go back to how I ate in my childhood when I was young, and all I did was just go to the grocery store and get the corn on the cob and cabbage and all the stuff my mother was feeding me, and I just didn't have any pork chops with it or no chicken with it. That's all. So it was an easier transition than it is for my children or this generation, because this generation that lives especially up north, and I would say all over the country, with the advent of the high price of rent or mortgage and cost of living, you got two-parent households, so mommy's not cooking as much as mommy used to cook. And mommies used to cook even though they worked back when I was growing up. They still would cook. But over the years, I would notice my mother wouldn't cook that much during the week. She'd warm some stuff up. We began to eat more processed foods. She wouldn't really cook a good dinner maybe till Friday night. Over the weekend, maybe once a week she'll cook because she's craving food she grew up with. But it became hard for her to work a 9 to 5, 2 hours transportation, you know, and come home and have the energy to cook. But it was very easy for me to transition into what I was eating, but it was very difficult for me to get off of what I was eating. That was the hard part. It wasn't hard knowing what I was going to eat instead, but it was hard not going to McDonald's or going to Doc's to get a fish sandwich. That was very hard. And so that's what made me use this process. This is the process I use to change the way I eat. I had to do it like step by step. So I just did step by step. I just eliminated one thing at a time. Because even though you want to eat better, you still crave the food you've been eating because it's very convenient. You've been eating it a whole lot. And so the hardest part about going vegetarian or vegan or Ital is to eliminate what you've been eating. So if you do want to eat better and you want to eliminate what you've been eating, then go to my website, www.veganintel.com, and get the easiest way to become a vegan. And this will help you slowly eliminate as you start experimenting with more fruits and vegetables. On this end, you'll begin to eliminate things. So you'll do them simultaneously. Eliminate a little bit, add a little bit. Eliminate a little bit, add a little bit till you get there. So make sure you go get the easiest way to become a vegan and start working on your eating. So next we're going to talk about Ital, which is a Rasta way of eating. Okay, so that's coming up next. But check this out, and then we'll continue.
Peace, health, and longevity. If you want to consume more plant-based foods, if you want to abstain from junk foods, if you want to consume fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and herbs, and avoid dead flesh, artificial flavors and colorings, sweeteners, anything that is unreal basically, purchase this particular manual, The Easiest Way to Become a Vegan by Pharaoh Ramesses El-Aton, who has been a vegan 40 plus years. He will take you step by step on how to abstain from the junk foods, how to abstain from the dead flesh, the chicken, the turkey, the pork, beef, and all sorts of animal products. Purchase this particular manual, The Easiest Way to Become a Vegan, to eat more natural. Remember that the herbs are for the healing of the nations. Let food be your medicine and let medicine be your food. Consume of every fruit-bearing and herb-bearing tree. Unto you it shall be for meat. Purchase this particular manual, The Easiest Way to Become a Vegan by Pharaoh Ramesses El-Aton. Peace, health, and longevity.
Okay, so that was the history of vegetarians and vegetarianism. Next, we're going to talk about the Rasta concept of Ital. Ital is a way that Rasta describe the word vitality, vital. So Ital is in reference to vitality, strength. And so my first experience of learning about Ital is I began to get into a form of history, black history. I started identifying with ancient Kemet, which you know is Egypt. And from looking at the hieroglyphics and things like that, I synced all the brothers and sisters with their dreadlocks in ancient Kemet. I had met a brethren, he was a Kemetic brethren, and so I started growing me some dreadlocks because it just was a natural thing to me. I don't know why, but I started growing my dreadlocks. They're just as, I've had them just as long as I've been a vegan pretty much. 46 years, 45, 46 years. And because I was growing the dreadlocks, that's not really how I really came in contact with Rasta per se, but kind of. As I said earlier, we used to eat at a health food store. And I was working downtown at the Treasury Department, and there was a health food store not far from me on Van Buren. So I would leave work and go to the health food store and get me like a vegetable juice or whatever. And I was in there, and there was this brother with these long dreadlocks. And since I was growing dreadlocks, I said, "Whoa, how long it took you to get that?" It was all the way down to his thighs in the back. So he said, "You got to be patient, brethren." And he gave me a flyer to a concert. I ran home and told my girlfriend. I seen all these people on the flyer with dreadlocks. I was amazed because I didn't know that Rastas had dreadlocks under them tams. I didn't know what a Rasta was. So when I used to see brothers with those tams, I just thought they had a tam on or an apple cap because brothers was wearing apple caps back in the 60s. But come to find out, they had hair under there. So to make a long story short, I ended up going to the concert, ended up to being around a bunch of Rasta brethren and things like that. And then I was introduced to Ital. I met some Trinidadian brothers that lived out in Harvey, Illinois, and I would go out to their home. And every day, around 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning, they would get in the car and drive a few, like maybe a mile away or less, right? And they would get the vegetables. They would come and they would put a pot on the fire. They would dig a hole and put 4 things and put the pot on the fire. And they would cook this big pot of vegetables. And the way they would cook the vegetables is they'd get the water boiling. They'd get a coconut and grate it up. And when they would grate the coconut up, they would take the coconut water out the coconut and put it in there and they would squeeze it. They would wash their hands real good. They would squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it, and it would turn to milk. And then they would put that coconut milk in the pot. Now they would put the food in the pot according to what's going to take the longest to get ready. So if something's going to take 35 minutes to get ready, they put that in there first. If something's going to take 25 minutes to get ready, they'll wait 10 minutes and put that in there. And they put each food in there based on which one's going to get ready so that by the time the one that takes the longest get ready, it's all ready. And they called it yaba. And they would make a yaba pot of Ital. So that was my first introduction to Ital because I was eating the Ital food. So I took that way of cooking with me across the world when I moved to Hawaii up in the mountains on the Big Island. I was cooking a yaba pot of Ital. And Ital is basically just straight vegetables. You might got some beans. Most likely, a lot of times they have rice. They'll have some brown rice or something like that with all these vegetables in a big pot. And so that was my introduction to Ital. Now, somebody asked me, how How often were I persecuted or teased by your peers for ditching the meat? Well, because I was growing dreadlocks and because I was going vegan, or vegetarian I thought back then, I wasn't around my peers that much. I was around a whole different group of people. So I wasn't around the people I grew up with or anything like that. I went and hung around like-minded people. I didn't hang around people that wasn't like-minded. But there was a couple of times when I was at my parents' house cooking or making food, they would say little statements, but you know, when they would come down and say, "Oh, I see you eating your rabbit food," and what I would do is I would wait till they was eating, and I would come down and, my dad's eating breakfast with some eggs. I say, "Oh, I see you eating your aborted chickens and your pig," and they said, "Boy, stop! You're messing up my appetite." I said, "Well, leave me alone, and I'll leave you alone, because the thing is, what they say to me doesn't make me lose my appetite. But if I point out specifically what they're eating, it'll make them lose their appetite." So I didn't really go through much problems like that. I basically dealt with women. When I met a woman, it was a woman got the same like mine. We used to go to a lot of reggae shows and stuff like that, so you can meet a queen there that's already on that page or willing to go that way. So I never really, even still today, I don't really socialize with meat eaters. On top of that, me studying black consciousness and stuff, I eliminated European holidays because I didn't see where they were relevant to me, just like the Chinese over here. They have Chinese New Year. So I really didn't see where Christmas was relevant to me, or Thanksgiving, or I didn't see where any of that stuff was relevant to me as a black person. So with a mixture of not really dealing with that, and it was real simple because I just wasn't around uh, a certain energy. You know, why would I go somewhere where they're cooking a bunch of stuff that I don't agree with it? Why would I even go? I don't see the purpose in going. And the thing about socializing when you're a vegan, when you're plant-based, is it's not pleasant because you make people uncomfortable. So for the sake of the people that's having the dinners and stuff, I don't go because they become uncomfortable. Everybody becomes uncomfortable. You can't really go to a family dinner and eat plant-based food. They become uncomfortable. They start, instead of everybody just sitting down and they eat their food and you eat your food, they start questioning you, and looking all in your plate and questioning you. So it's really not comfortable. So all these years I just never been around that. I've never been back around that scene. I don't go to Christmas, family Thanksgiving. I don't go to that stuff. If they want to see me, they have to see me just on a regular, normal day and we just visit. But if they're celebrating a pagan holiday or something like that, something I'm not into, I let them enjoy themselves, what I'm going to come for. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't really have a lot of pushback. Do I eat tofu? No, I don't eat tofu because tofu, they say it's got too much estrogen. But I did eat tofu. I do respect tofu highly. Tofu is very sacred to me because tofu was the first food that allowed me to be able to take my woman to dinner and things like that, because it wasn't long that we found out we can go to a Chinese restaurant. I took my queen to a Chinese restaurant. I said, well, I'll just go in here and get some fried rice and vegetables. So I had my queen, I think it was in Hyde Park, and I ordered some fried rice and vegetables, and the waiter said, would you like tofu? And I never had heard of tofu. So I said, what is tofu? He said, tofu is made from a bean. I was like, yeah. So tofu, even though we graduate as vegans from certain things, I always respect the things that helped us graduate. So I really respect tofu. Tofu helped a lot of people have a meat replacement. It helped a lot of people have a milk replacement until we got to the point where we started to make almond milk and pea milk and cashew milk. It was a process. So I still respect the process. But I don't consume tofu. But there is a new product that that I am going to be getting as soon as it's sold out in the stores, and that's a new product because I'm working out right now, building muscle. I'm 66. I'm trying to go on this muscle build, so I am going to be getting this product, Big Mountain. It's a soy-free tofu. It's made from fava beans. And so I tried to get it the other day, but they were sold out. So as soon as they get this back in stock, I'm going to be trying this for a while because there's 64 grams of protein in it. So if I eat half of that, that's a good 32 grams of protein, along with my other protein in my meal. That'll help my workout. All right? So the next phase we're going to talk about is Ital. So let's look into the history of Ital. Right? Here we go. Bob Marley is widely known for his music, his Rastafari faith, and even more pro-environment sentiments. After all, climate change was already an issue in the 70s during the height of his career. What many people may not know is at the heart of Marley's faith sat a strong environment-friendly principle that still persists amongst the Rastafarians of Jamaica today and all over the world. An essential principle within their beliefs is this concept of Ital. The Ital liberty is similar and often even conflated with the vegan liberty, but it is not the same. Now let me stop there and explain to you. It's not the same because Ital is a concept of cooking vegetables and eating vegetables and fruit, but basically cooking vegetables, beans and vegetables and rice is all plant-based food. And vegan actually is just a definition, meaning no animal byproducts. So Ital is an actual food that you cook, and vegan is just a description. So if you cook an Ital meal, that Ital meal is vegan, because vegan describes that Ital meal does not have any animal byproduct. So I'm on a single mission now to straighten that out, because as you can see, even these experts don't know that. So you all need to know the difference. Ital is cooking all natural food. Vegan is a description that only means no animal byproduct. Okay? So what does Ital mean? It can be considered differently by different people within the Rastafari faith. Right? This person says, my interpretation of it is natural, said Carice Lawrence, a wellness event producer at the Rastafari indigenous village in Montego Bay, Jamaica. One of the special things about Rastafari is language. We've chosen to use words with more feeling and positive meaning, which is how you get words like I and I instead of we. And that is how we get words like Ital instead of natural. So Ital means natural. Okay? Though there are different fractions with different beliefs and lifestyle practices within Rastafari, there are some consistencies with the Ital liberty, Lawrence said. Not having processed foods, animals, and eating from the earth, preferably your own garden or a farmer you know and trust. The Ital liberty, I don't know why they didn't use liberty, because we don't use diet because we don't die, we live. So the Ital liberty is what's known as a sustainable food system, a closed-looped way of eating that allows the food source and the environment to replenish. Food system transformation is a great way to address health and the environment at once, according to research published in the Journal of Cleaner Production. Food systems are estimated to be responsible for a third of human-caused greenhouse emissions. But it is not just the emissions that contribute to climate change. It's also the growing practice, said Michel Emmanuel, life science lecturer and botanist at the University of the West Indies. Pesticides and fertilizer runoff can be absorbed deep into the earth, blighting the land, or washed into waterways, significantly disrupting the ecosystem there. Pesticides can also pose health risks to humans, particularly people with high levels of exposure, like agricultural workers. While it may not be possible to completely overturn the food processing industry in one fell swoop, some key takeaways from the Rastafarian Ital liberty could help inform and inspire a healthy transition. Leonard Howell, who was widely regarded as the first Rastafarian, established a 500-acre commune in the hills of St. Catherine. It was fully self-sufficient, with over 4,000 members eating and living off the land. This is where the germ of the Ital concept of a three-pronged approach to food system transformation began to thrive. For Howard, it was about creating economic independence by eating what they grew, but it was just as much about the health of the people and the environment that nourished them. The principle of eating what you grow is a great place to start. You don't need a 500-acre commune. Simple backyard gardens or planters on a balcony would do. Limiting the consumption of ultra-processed foods is another key principle that has application in any household. These foods have preservative, flavoring, sugar, and other substances added to them to enhance flavor and lengthen shelf life. Looking into organic alternatives for some of your favorite ultra-processed foods is an excellent first step. Developing a relationship with the farmer market in your area could also be a good way to support organic agriculture and fill in areas where your backyard garden may fall short. Support for these markets is already growing, Emmanuel said. We see the change taking place, Emmanuel said. People are becoming more conscious of where their food comes from, who is actually growing it, and what sort of inputs are being used. So you'll see a lot of farmers markets being set up around the country. We see consumers are willing to patronize agricultural products where they are closer to the people growing them and are able to have certain amount of input in the way things are done. But food processing isn't necessarily the enemy. Not all processed foods are ultra processed, and there are ways to do it without risking the viability of the environment. A project from the Norway-based Food Research Institute, NOFEMA, for example, tested new technology with the potential to replace autoclaves, a machine used to ensure food safety and extend life that requires a lot of water and energy. These new sustainable ways to process food are slowly making their way into the industry. So basically, they're saying that the concept of Ital goes all the way back to the 1930s, right? How do I prepare my tofu? I usually like to slice it, let it dry a little bit, put it in a skillet and saute it, or slice it, let it dry out a little bit, or tap it with something to get the moisture off of it and put it and bake it on a stainless steel baking sheet. Put it in the oven or cast iron skillet. Put it in the cast iron skillet and put it in the oven and bake it. If you want to bake it, then you want to season it as it's baking and turn it over so you can fry it, or you can bake it, or you can saute it. Yeah. Baking it is probably the healthiest way. You don't have to use so much oil. You know what I mean? You can bake it. They used to say, Danielle, that at first they said that soy was no good for women because it can increase breast cancer. But they realized they was testing it on rats and that the conclusions was wrong. Now they're saying because of the estrogen in the soy, they're saying that soy is actually good for women and that the estrogen from the soy actually protects women from breast cancer. And the soy is made from a soybean. So when people tell you that soy is plastic and all that, people just will say anything. No, soy is from a bean that they've been eating in China forever. Okay? So that's Ital. Ital is a Rasta concept that basically means natural. Natural food. Vital, vitality, strengthened, because it's naturally from the earth. So Ital is vital. So you got vegetarianism back in the 1800s and beyond, but it really didn't get named until the 1800s. Then you got Ital get named in the 1930s. And then next, in the order from vegetarian to Ital, next we have vegan. And vegan is really a very misunderstood term. And people give the wrong definition of the word vegan. The word vegan is nothing more than a description of a vegetarian that does not consume any animal byproduct. That's all vegan means. Vegan means no animal byproduct. So there's no such thing as vegan food. There's food that's vegan. So your vegetarian meal, if you don't have no animal byproduct in it, it's a vegan meal. if your Ital does not have any animal byproduct in it, then that Ital is vegan. And so I am working hard to straighten out the definition of the word vegan, because they are trying to say vegan is a food, and vegan is not a food. Vegan is a description, meaning no animal byproduct. And so when you buy vitamins, you're not buying vegan vitamins, you're buying vitamins that are vegan. If you buy a vegan donut, you're not buying a vegan donut, you're buying a donut that is vegan. And that has not been explained to the people. So you have people saying, I don't eat vegan, I eat whole plant-based. That is vegan. You know, that is vegan. It's like, if you're not eating any animal byproducts, then your meal is vegan. It's too much confusion out here. You know, so don't let nobody fool you just because you see plant-based meats and stuff and say that vegan food ain't no good. No, that's not. A Beyond Burger is not a vegan burger. It's a burger that is vegan. Potato chips are vegan. Corn chips with sea salt are vegan. A lemon is vegan. If you're eating a lemon, that's vegan. That's anything you're consuming that doesn't have an animal byproduct is vegan. So if you make a baked potato and you put nutritional yeast in it and a little olive oil, that's vegan. It's not vegan because it's a vegan potato. It's a vegan because what it doesn't have in it. Vegan is a description of elimination. It simply means no animal byproduct. That's what the word vegan means. So please don't let anybody confuse you all about the word vegan. So my manual, the easiest way to become a vegan, is the easiest way to what? Get off animal byproducts. That's it. So let's look into the history of veganism. The more recent history of veganism goes back to the Vegan Society. The Vegan Society was founded in November 1944. The Vegan Society may have been established nearly 80 years ago, but veganism has been around much longer. Evidence of people choosing to avoid animal products can be traced back over 2,000 years. As early as 500 BCE, Greek philosophers and mathematician Pythagoras promoted benevolence among all species and followed what could be described as a vegetarian diet. Around the same time, Siddhartha Gautama, better known as the Buddha, was discussing vegetarian diets with his followers. Fast forward to 1806 CE, and the earliest concept of veganism are just starting to take shape with Dr. William Lambie and Percy Bessie Shelley among the first Europeans to publicly object to eggs and dairies on ethical grounds. The first modern-day vegans. In November 1944, Donald Watson, the man to your right, called a meeting with 5 other non-dairy vegetarians, including Elise Shrigley, to discuss non-dairy vegetarians' diets and lifestyle. Though many held similar views at the time, these 6 pioneers were the first to actively found a new movement despite opposition. the group felt a new word was required to describe them, something more concise than non-dairy vegetarians. Rejected words included dairyman, vitan, and benivore. They settled on vegan, a word that Donald Watson later described as containing the first three and the last two letters of vegetarian. That's genius. That is genius. I didn't know that. In the words of Donald Watson, it marked the beginning and end of vegetarian. The word vegan was coined by Donald Watson from a suggestion by early members Mr. George A. Henderson and his wife Faye K. Henderson that the society should be called All Vega and the magazine All Vegan. Although the vegan diet was defined early on, it was as late as 1949 before Leslie J. Krauss pointed out that the society lacked a definition of veganism, and he suggested the principle of the emancipation of animals for exploitation by man. This is later clarified as to seek an end to the use of animals by man for food, commodities, work, hunting, vivisection, and by all other uses involving exploitation of animal life by man. The society was first registered as a charity in August 1964, but its assets were later transferred to the new charity when it also became a limited company in December 1979. So I became a vegan in 1978, and all of this really transformed in 1979. I didn't know that either. The definition of veganism and the charitable objects of the society were amended and refined over the years. By winter 1988, the definition was in use, although the phrasing has changed slightly over the years and remains so today. Okay, so that makes sense. So that's why I didn't know I was a vegan, because the word didn't really come out till 1988. So yeah, that's about when I started calling myself a vegan. Interesting. I didn't know any of this. So yeah, we called ourselves vegetarians that didn't eat dairy. And so yeah, so around 1988 is when around the time, when I'm on my way back to LA, that I realized I'm a vegan. A philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude as far as is possible and practicable all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of human, animals, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. Now, they did make a mistake. They should have put a healthy alternative, because, just because you're not eating animals does not mean you're eating healthy. So they should have included that, health. Because animal rights vegans often are not healthy because they're not eating animals for the sake of the animals. But you have to always eat for nutritional benefits, or you'll end up eating potato chips and Beyond Burgers. Delving into Vegan Society archives, our researchers in residence, Dr. Sam Calvert, has been hard at work delving into our archives at Vegan Society headquarters, discovering how the new Vegan Society began and how we've grown over the decades. So that's basically the history of veganism. Okay, yeah. So yeah, all you have to do to protect yourself, Danielle, from breast cancer is to make sure you don't wear no bra that's putting no marks on you or nothing. And just stay away from artificial colors, artificial flavors, preservatives, and things like that because a woman's breasts, stomach, and uterus are all connected. So this is how when you get pregnant, boom, your body begins to know it's got to make milk, and this is how women breastfeed. So if that's all connected, where your breasts know you're having a baby, and your breasts begin to make milk, that also means that all that's connected. So now, if you're putting poison into your stomach and into your body, and it's all connected to your breasts, common sense say that if your breasts know that you just had a baby, that your breast is going to pick up these poisons, these toxics, these forever chemicals, these plastics, and all that. So, women, you should really be trying to eat as clean as possible. Also, you're putting chemicals in your deodorant up under your arm, right? And when you put that stuff under your arm, it's got chemicals in it. What's right there? Your breast. You're putting colognes and perfumes on. You don't know what's in it. So you not only have to look at what you eat, you have to change all your products that you're cooking with, that you're cleaning your house with, and that you're putting on your body. So it's a total 360 degrees of consciousness. You know what I mean? You're going to do fine. Just stay on your course, Danielle, and you will be there. Just stay on your course. Stay on your course. Keep thinking, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to make myself get sick. Anybody can get sick, but you don't want to make yourself sick. And what does that mean? It means I could get sick. I don't, but I could. But imagine if I smoke cigarettes all day, every day, and then I get lung cancer. I basically made myself sick. What if I'm drinking liquor all during the week? On the weekend, I'm drinking. Boom, I get cirrhosis of the liver. I made myself sick. What if I'm stuffing a bunch of processed food into my colon, processed meats? I get colon cancer. I made myself sick. So you all have to work hard not to make yourself sick. And so you can see that the Ital way of eating was in the 30s. But before that, vegetarianism has been identified. But vegetarianism was a little loose. And some people were still vegetarians, but they was consuming dairy products. So the vegetarians that didn't consume dairy products, they wanted to come out with something that clearly defined us as non-dairy, no animal byproducts, and the term vegan was born, which I didn't know, which is the first three words of vegetarian, letters of vegetarians, and the last two letters of vegetarian. I've even learned today, I never knew that vegan comes from the word vegetarian. Genius. And so a lot of times when I do my live, we're learning together. I don't read this stuff ahead of time because I feel like it's more exciting if we all learn together and my mind get blown and your mind get blown at the same time. I think it makes it better. I think it's more interesting because it's like, oh, wow, we all at home saying, oh, wow, we didn't know that. So I never pre-read. I just find where the information is. I go live and we read it all together. So tonight you learned and I learned at the same time. So definitely clean it up, eat better, whatever you do, when you're trying to eat better, don't try to change nobody else. It's the worst thing you could do. Don't preach to nobody else. Don't try to change anybody else because you don't have yourself together. You know what I mean? So wait till you have yourself together, because by the time you get yourself all the way together, you will have a better idea of how to bring it to other people. Because you can't just bring that to other people like that. It's too intrusive. So if you're changing the way you eat, sometimes you get excited, you want to tell everybody, but it's very hard to change. It takes a while. You have to learn how to cook different. You have to, taste buds got to adjust. You got to shop different. A lot of things you got to do different. Your way you socialize becomes a little different. So you don't really have room to be trying to tell nobody else. So my advice to you, if you're changing the way you eat, just be quiet and just do it. Because you could fall off the wagon, and that's the worst thing you could do. The worst thing you could do is be telling your parents or your relatives or your friends, hey, y'all need to get off meat. Y'all need to get off meat. Because you're trying to get off meat, and then you fall off the wagon, and then they see you eating some chicken, and they say, you phony. See? Because you put the cart before the horse. You put the wagon in front of the horse. So wait and make sure you got yourself together before you be preaching, because you ain't strong enough in it to be telling nobody else. Always remember, when it comes to changing the way you eat and cleaning up your lifestyle and getting more healthy products and healthy food, it's called self-improvement. Self-improvement. Concentrate on yourself. They say, what about I got children? Don't be telling them nothing. Don't tell your children, I bought some better juice. Just buy some better juice. And they say, Mama, can I have some juice? Here. You don't have to tell them, this is better juice. Just give it to them. You don't have to tell them, this is better food. Just figure out how you can cook something they're going to eat that's better, and don't tell them nothing. Don't tell them nothing. And if you want to help your children eat better, when you go to the store, let them pick the fruit they like. Don't worry about if it's organic and all that. You take baby steps. So your little girl loves grapes, get a whole heap of them. See what I'm saying? To help clean the baby's stomach out. Let her eat her grapes. Your son, he loves apples. Get him 5 apples. Cut them up for him. One here, the next day here. So you ain't really saying nothing. You letting them clean out their body without even knowing it. Because they got a transition too, so they might be eating a little meat or whatever. So what you want to do, you want to make sure that meat gets out their system so they don't get no colon cancer. So you're going to flush it with what? Fruit. So if you want to help your children, start introducing them to more fruit. Whatever their favorite vegetable is, if your daughter, that's her favorite vegetable, your son, that's their favorite vegetable, his favorite. When you cook dinner, cook both of their favorite vegetables. Give both of them, but give her more of the one she like, and give him more of the one he like. He gonna knock it down, and this is gonna keep his taste buds natural, and help him digest any meat or anything you still have to get him while he's transitioning. This is why people say, "Well, Pharaoh, my granddaddy ate meat. My granddaddy ate meat too." But the reason my great-grandmother lived 117 years is because the ratio of vegetables to the meat. They didn't eat meat and potatoes and bread. They didn't eat that down south. They ate a whole bunch of vegetables and some little bit of meat. And so now those vegetables is going to ensure they don't get colon cancer. because now the meat's going to pass right through because they just ate some lima beans and corn on the cob and okra and stuff. That's going to help them digest it. This generation is eating meat and dry bread. Bread is dry, the meat is dry, and the french fries. Think about it. Think about a hamburger and fries, how dry that is. How your body going to digest all that dry stuff? And when you eat it in your body's going to pull all the moisture out of it. So now you got this lump of dry stuff in your intestines. And how are you going to push out a big old lump of dry stuff out of your colon? How? How are you going to push a big lump of dry meat and bread and french fries through here? You're not. So it's going to get in there. Your colon's going to be swelling up. Your stomach going to be bigger. You're going to get swollen up. It's going to turn to starch, sugar. You're just going to be a mess. You're going to be way overweight. When Elvis passed away, he had pounds and pounds of waste in him. If you do have to go to the hospital, they got to do a colon. They got to clean your colon. They got to do a colonic and all of that before they can do surgery because you're so full of waste. Okay? You're so full of waste that you got to do colonic and you got to do all this stuff to be able to clean yourself out. So, health is wealth. So take care of yourself. Make sure you eat right and take care of yourself. Don't let nobody tell you any other different. And plant-based is basically the same thing as Ital, with a little difference, because plant-based, if you look at the term plant-based, that means anything made out of plants. So some people say don't eat these foods made, these plant-based meats and stuff, but it's plant-based. They say eat plant-based. Well, plant-based just means it's plants. So if I take some plants and make some bread, it's a plant-based bread. If I take some plants and make some chips, it's a plant-based chip. If I take some plants and make some candy, it's plant-based candy because the base is plants. So don't let nobody fool you with these words. Use the word for what it really means. None of those words, vegetarian, Ital, vegan, plant, none of those words mean healthy. They just mean what they mean. Now, they are healthy, but then people defile the word because you have brothers, Rastas now in Jamaica eating some fish and some vegetables, tomorrow you eating Ital. They're not even identifying Ital for what it was originally. So these words, people going to kind of misuse them. So it's up to you to eat healthy, to eat a lot of vegetables and fruit, herbs and spices, nuts and grains. It's up to you to not really worry about the words so much. But if you're transitioning, you're trying to go vegan. You're trying to go vegan because you're trying to eliminate animal byproducts. Okay, so stay positive, eat right, and stay healthy, and make sure you go check out the website. Grab yourself a shirt or something like that to represent your new lifestyle, all right? Victory, go vegan.